This is actual good news. In Oklahoma, I've made videos on this before, and I don't want to rehash everything, but you may remember that in the state of Oklahoma, there was a Catholic school that wanted to function as a public charter school, which means they wanted public money to run their Catholic school. It was called St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School. And Ryan Walters, the Christian nationalist guy in charge of public instruction there, basically helped them get the approval they needed. And that led to lawsuits. And we were all trying to figure out, well, like the school year's starting now, it's middle of August. So what's going to happen with this place? And this week, some good news here is that, check out this headline right here. Oklahoma Statewide Charter School Board rescinds St. Isidore contract. And just look at this first paragraph. The Oklahoma Statewide Charter School Board voted unanimously Monday to rescind the contract for what would be the nation's first publicly funded religious school. They ripped up the contract between them and the Catholic school, which is great, but it took so much to get there, okay? Let me talk a little bit about that. Conservatives have been pushing for a long time, and in many states, to use public money to fund private education. And private education usually means Christian education. And in many states, it goes by the word vouchers. They use different terms in different states. But this particular contract between the state of Oklahoma and this virtual charter school, it was actually shot down by the Oklahoma Supreme Court earlier in June. I think we talked about it back then. And I just want to share with you what the Oklahoma Supreme Court majority said at the time. Just read through this with me because it's really interesting. Under Oklahoma law, a charter school is a public school. As such, a charter school must be non-sectarian. However, St. Isidore will evangelize the Catholic faith as part of the school curriculum while sponsored by the state. This is so like building blocks here. This state's establishment of a religious charter school violates Oklahoma statutes, the Oklahoma Constitution, and the Establishment Clause. St. Isidore cannot justify its creation by invoking free exercise rights as a religious entity. St. Isidore came into existence through its charter with the state and will function as a component of the state's public school system. This case turns on the state's contracted for religious teachings and activities through a new public charter school, not the state's exclusion of a religious entity. So basically, what the court said is you don't get to function. This is illegal. So the Supreme Court of Oklahoma voted, was it 7-1? 7-1 to block the state from opening up this charter school. And what happened after that? It's kind of amazing. Ryan Walters is like, well, don't worry. You can say whatever you want. I'm going to ask my friends at the Supreme Court, and they'll take care of me. But the amazing thing is that's not what the Attorney General said. Attorney General Gentner Drummond, who's been actually, despite being a Republican in Oklahoma, has been really good on church-state issues. He said he will be seeking contempt citations for the board of the charter school. He said, if you don't rip up the contract, now that the Supreme Court of our state has said it's illegal, if you don't rip up the contract, I'm going to go after each one of you with contempt citations that carry up to 6 months in jail and a $500 fine for board members' continued non-compliance with the June 25th court order. Holy shit, he was going to go after them. And then finally, after they ripped up the contract, he said, while it's appalling that the board took so long to recognize the authority of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, I am pleased the board members finally fulfilled their duty. And look at this. He just keeps going here, which is great. The proposed state-sponsored religious charter school funded by our tax dollars represents a serious threat to the religious liberty of all 4 million Oklahomans. Like, holy crap, does this guy work for the ACLU? I'm not used to hearing Republicans speak like that, but good for him. Like, he's going to lose the next election, but good for this guy. What's even more amazing is that as of a couple of weeks ago, after the Oklahoma Supreme Court tore down and said you can't have this school, that charter school board voted to appeal to the US Supreme Court. They were like ready to ignore all of it. And the attorney general basically forced their hand so they can't do it, which is incredible. What was Ryan Walters' reaction to all this? What was funny is I said it was a unanimous decision to rip up the contract. Ryan Walters is a member of that board. He was not at that meeting. He sent a proxy to vote on his behalf, and the proxy said, yeah, let's rip up the contract. Like, no way. So here's Ryan Walters' response to all this. The Oklahoma Supreme Court has failed Oklahomans in their latest dismal ruling against parents and kids. They have chosen the path of liberal extremism. Let's pause. The Oklahoma Supreme Court, which is majority Republican, has chosen the path of liberal extremism, probably because they're members of the lizard mafia. And Marxism. They're all Marxists on the Oklahoma Supreme Court by depriving parents of a choice. They do have a choice. They can send their kids to a private school if they want. They do not get to just send their kids to whatever crazy contraption a Catholic church dreams up and expect to be funded for it along the way. So this idea that they're depriving parents of a choice is BS. Ryan Walters says, it's shameful but predictable from a failed judicial system. They do not represent conservative Oklahoma values. Like, there is no Republican in the state of Oklahoma who is good enough for Ryan Walters, because even a right-wing Supreme Court and a right-wing attorney general who says maybe we should follow the text of our state constitution, those people do not represent conservative Oklahoma values, he says, because he's insane. You know, as I've said for a while now, Ryan Walters, I think, part of me wonders how serious he is about all this. This is the same guy who has said you have to put the Bible in it. You have to use the Bible in every class starting this school year, and they're still trying to figure that one out. I think he's just jockeying to be Donald Trump's next Secretary of Education, hoping to be the next Betsy DeVos. And part of me wonders, if Donald Trump does not win the election, and that means Ryan Walters will not have that job, does he kind of back down from all this? Or does he keep going at it with the same vehemence he's been at this forever? Again, the Oklahoma Supreme Court laid out a very simple reasoning for their decision. It said, our Constitution says this, giving money to a Catholic school violates that, so it's bad. You can't do that. They said tax dollars cannot fund sectarian education. It's not complicated. And had they ruled the other way, it would have been a disaster. It would have opened the floodgates, not just in Oklahoma, but other states would have used that decision to argue for the same thing in their states. Anytime taxpayers have to foot the bill for private religious schools, that means there is less money available for public education, which is, I know, the goal of a lot of conservatives. They just want to ruin public schools for everybody else and force them to go to private religious schools. I'll have more about that next week when I do this live stream. But I mean, the good news for now is that, as far as I can tell, this Catholic school is dead. They are not going to have this thing opened up for the new school year because they were counting on public money, which, you know, too bad for them. That's their fault. It's the fault of any parent who enrolled in this school. Parents will have to find a real school to send their kids to in the meantime. But again, kudos to the Oklahoma Supreme Court for making the right decision, and to the Oklahoma Attorney General who stood up for church-state separation. Basically, good for everyone except Ryan Walters and every member of that charter school board who voted to keep the charade going until the last second when they realized they might get in trouble for breaking the law. By the way, this Catholic school, had it been allowed to open up, it was expected to cost taxpayers more than $26 million over the first 5 years. And this is after Oklahoma voters said in 2016, we don't want to repeal the part of our state constitution that bans public money from going to private entities. They said, we don't want any of our taxpayer money funding religion. In Oklahoma, they said that. And Ryan Walters is like, I don't care what the voters said. We want to do that anyway. So again, listen, if you're looking for hope, Oklahoma Republicans stopped the nation's first ever religious charter school. I mean, if they can do that in Oklahoma, there's hope for everybody else too, right? So good for them.